Yes, and welcome to Middle-earth Talk Radio. I'm your host, Hawk, and through the wonders of Tolkien Moot, we have a live broadcast. I believe this is show number 33 of Middle-earth Talk Radio. Right now we're live, although if you downloaded this later, it won't be live. I have a special co-host here. Michael Martinez was unable to make it this year. Brian Huseland of the Inland Empire Tolkien Society.
Glad to be here.
Welcome, Brian. And we have a live studio audience right here at Tolkien Moot. And over the internet as well, we are streaming live. There's a few little technical glitches going on, but there are people listening from different parts of the world and in several chat rooms. So hopefully people will ask questions as we go along, and we'll do the best we can to answer them. If you have questions here in the audience, just raise your hand, and I'll either Brian or I will call on you and ask you to speak out the question. Please do speak loudly so that our internet audience can hear what's being said. And we'll probably repeat the question back just to make sure I understand it so they can hear it.
Welcome to all you out there listening.
Some quick Administrivia before we get on with the main part of the show. The chat room, for those of you who are listening, if you're not using a dedicated internet relay chat IRC client, with the website info for irc.merp.com and merp chat for the chat room or Tolkien Moot chat room. There is a Java applet on the tolkienmoot.org website. Some of you might have stumbled across this through the Icecast or Shoutcast radio browsing. You can use that applet to join the chat room. However, there's a little trick to it since it's Java. Depends upon how up to date your Java is. It first might ask you if it wants to block unsafe features. Say no to that. You're not going to get sabotaged or attacked or anything. But if you don't say no to that, it's going to disable some of the key features for the applet. And then on the next pop-up, it'll say, do you want to allow these things to run? You'll say yes. This is a recent change in Java. I think 1.7 changed it. It used to be you just clicked yes, and it worked. Now since they changed it, you have to click no and yes. And that's a little frustrating. But that's how you can get into the chat room there to ask questions. If you want, you can send an email to the middleearthradio@gmail.com, and I'll periodically see if something shows up in the queue if you can't get into the chat room. I won't be able to watch the forums because I keep refreshing pages, so I'll get to those later. And we have in the Tolkien Moot chat room, let's see, actual people, 1, 2, 3, 4 at least. Merp chat, a couple more. And OneRing.net says it has 24 people total.
Great.
How many are actually listening, I do not know.
We hope several.
Normally I can check into the server and see how many people are connected, but no, actually let me do that. So.
And we're actually broadcasting from Spokane, Washington.
Yes, at the Ramada Limited Suites on Newport Highway. So thanks to them for letting us use their meeting room. At least this year we've had some real air conditioning compared to other years. Woo! Hasn't been the sauna. We have 6 people currently streaming right now. So that's a little something. We've peaked. Yeah, so that's where we're at right now. We'll see how that increases over time.
Great.
Again, some people apparently with Windows Media Player, some newer versions are having trouble. Some people are connecting fine. Others, for some reason, can't connect. I seem to remember an addendum update that said Microsoft's doing some shenanigans with MP3. That they want to support WMV and Windows formats before other third-party formats, so you have to add an MP3 plugin to your Windows Media Player for some MP3 streams. So we are streaming MP3 because when I use the open source format of OGG, almost no Windows users can listen to it without getting a plugin. So if you know somebody who's trying to connect and can't, tell them to use like Winamp or VLC or some other thing, just get that installed really quickly. And I apologize for that. I'll see what I can do to get a fix for that for future issues. But at least we are up and running, which Saturday is more than could be said. The video from yesterday is up on the website and on the Facebook Tolkien Scholars website. People have been checking that out and giving likes to it.
Great.
Also, a lot of the photos from yesterday are up on both the website and on Facebook. Lots of thumbs up for those. And I just put low-res ones up there. I will be putting the higher res ones on the Tolkien Moot website a little later, so that if you want to grab one for yourself, if it's of yourself, feel free. But right now there's low res versions of audio, and those of you who chose to work hard, and then just the general shots. Okay, I think we can get on with the actual show.
Great. Well, let's start off, Hawk, by talking about the Hobbit films that are currently in production right now at this time.
Okay.
We have, of course, as you may be aware, it's been great to be kind of at this point in time to be talking about all things Tolkien, simply because we're in the generation of where film really has been able to be able to start doing some justice to the world of Middle Earth, aka New Zealand, and the fantastic special effects that have been brought to it. So we've all enjoyed, I'm sure, the Lord of the Rings trilogy films, which were unique in that it was a huge gamble and a risk. But before those ever got underway, back in the old days, there were a number of attempts to try to take J.R.R. Tolkien's stories and bring them to film, or some way of bringing them to the medium. And really, you had with The Hobbit, which is what we're going to focus on, you had the early Rankin Bass film, which has mixed reviews, but for those of my generation, the Hawks, remembering fondly as a youth, the low special effects but high in story content rendition of The Hobbit. So this was an animated film. Again, to today's graphic standards, ridiculous, but at the time, just the being able to take the story and hear it being dramatically done, and of course the BBC did it as well over radio. But it wasn't at the time possible to really do a live action film, was it?
Well, certainly not do it justice. You could do certain of the smaller parts, but as the scale became larger and larger, that would really be problematic.
Absolutely. So apparently back in 1995, actually Peter Jackson and Fran Walsh, way before the Lord of the Rings movies were made, had looked at the possibility of filming The Hobbit. But at that point, they were not able to do that because, oddly enough, with The Hobbit, the production rights belonged to Saul Zaentz, and the distribution rights belonged to United Artists.
Still? They still
at that point,
in
1995, they still had it. Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
And so, yeah, because it was after 1995 that those were sold, I believe, to MGM.
Okay.
So at that point, they really couldn't do it. So there were too many roadblocks, and that's when they started looking into, after the year 2000, or even right around that time, of buying the film rights for the Lord of the Rings. And so that's why the Lord of the Rings were filmed first instead of The Hobbit, even though The Hobbit was actually chronologically earlier.
And you would think would have been an easier project, except for maybe the smaller part.
Very true. Yeah, for sure.
And the Battle of Five Armies.
Of course.
Because the Eagles and the Wargs and all.
Yes, I'm sure they could have made it a really big Battle of Five Armies.
So I hope they do.
Yes. Well, and that's the one good thing is that because they took on, in some ways, a more ambitious project, it makes us very hopeful for what they can do with the Hobbit films, which indeed there are two they're planning to do. Originally, they were planning to do one with a bridge film that would be the time period between The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. But as a lot of you may know, they only have the film rights to the books, The Hobbit and the three stories of the Lord of the Rings. They don't have not the content in the Silmarillion or any of Tolkien's other writings. So
that's all the Tolkien estate. They didn't sell off those rights separate from the Enterprises.
So whatever they do in the two films, they have to pull only from what is actually mentioned in The Hobbit and in the Lord of the Rings. Although thankfully, there's some nuggets in The Hobbit that can be brought out.
Right.
And then of course there's the Council of Elrond, which has lots of goodies they can pull from. So that's good. And so then that's kind of the past evolution of the story to film. And then once the Lord of the Rings films were made, then the next step obviously was The Hobbit, after they did amazingly well. And all the money they invested ended up really being worthwhile. And that's when it got mired down in lawsuits. Don't know how many of you realize there were two lawsuits over the last 5 years. One was Peter Jackson's lawsuit against New Line Cinema that produced the Lord of the Rings. And that was because he felt that they had actually not been ethical in giving him what they said they would give. And he didn't actually ask for a certain amount. He just felt that they needed to be true to their contract. New Line thought that Peter Jackson was being greedy, and the two split ways for a while until MGM said, come on, you two, kiss and make up. We want to make this movie. Everybody else wants to make this movie. Let's find a way. So that's when they got back together. But at that point, Jackson was busy, wasn't he? And wasn't able to really take on the project.
What was he working on?
King Kong. Yeah.
Wow. And then he goes to Pressy with it. He says, now that I've done Lord of the Rings, I can finally do my life's dream, King Kong. Wow. After he did Lord of the Rings, King Kong is his live stream. Yes, Russ?
I actually thought he did a really good job on King Kong.
I do have to say, for a King Kong movie, he did, although it was distinctly Peter Jackson with the extra horror level, all the insects in the chasm and stuff.
This was the guy that did Meet the Feebles, so...
Yeah, well, or the Dead Alive.
Dead Alive, the Dead
Hundreds of gallons of blood in one scene.
Yes, we were all thankful for Peter Jackson's evolution as well. So he was busy, and Jackson was not able to take on the project, although he was willing to be a consultant and kind of basically a producer behind it, but not the main director. And this is when Guillermo del Toro was the one picked to direct it, and they started writing the script between del Toro and then, of course, Fran Walsh and Philippa Boyens had worked on the Lord of the Rings scripts, which made great movies. So that was the plan for a couple of years. And then the Tolkien Enterprises, aka Tolkien Trust, they pointed out also that they were supposed to get something like less than 10%, but somewhere in the neighborhood of 8% of all of the revenue. And New Line had actually mysteriously not followed through with that after they made gazillions of dollars. So they got slapped with a lawsuit on that too.
Yeah.
But it all ended happily last year when the Tolkien Trust said it's been settled. They paid us what we think is reasonable, and we're happy to say that The Hobbit is given the green light, can go ahead. But at this point now, Del Toro can no longer carry on with it because he had put aside some of his projects. And I think the Hellboy movies and some of the other ones that he'd been working on. So he was no longer able to kind of head it up, although he was involved with the writing and is still currently one of the script writers.
He is,
Yeah, just kind of as a backup guy.
Okay.
So he had a tremendous influence actually on the beginning of The Hobbit and how it was filmed. But I'm sure we're all glad that at this point, just because of all the delays, finally Peter Jackson was willing to come on. And in October of 2010, Peter Jackson was confirmed by New Line Cinema and Warner Brothers to be the new director.
Okay. Has anybody seen here? I'm going to pick at a nit though about it that I've seen.
Okay.
Has anybody seen the snapshots yet of the Dwarves for The Hobbit?
Yes. No.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, what were your thoughts?
What do you think?
Audience
Before I voice my opinion.
We've got one.
Who said yes? You've seen them? Speak up so we can hear you.
Sideburns?
Not so much the sideburns. On Bomber?
There's a few of them that don't even have beards.
I know.
Yeah.
It's not dwarvish, they need beards.
Yeah, they did not have the dwarf appeal.
And what about where's their hoods? Remember they all had colored
Yep.
hoods?
That
not,
might-
not one of them has a hood.
Although, to be
Right.
fair, I think it's possible that might be introduced later. You might not see it, might be behind them.
All right.
Maybe some things there that are not shown.
All right.
But there is some deviation.
Well, there's someone wearing hats and stuff.
Feely and Keely look suspiciously non-dwarvish.
Yeah, well, and they look like they're out of like maybe Lotro or World of Warcraft is what they look like. These are kind of exaggerated sizes, and their build's kind of exaggerated. They look like Lotro or World of
Dwarves on
Warcraft
steroids?
dwarves. What's that?
Dwarves on steroids.
Not so much, but just weird.
What do you think, Hawk?
That might just be early drafts.
Missing some of the bright colors. Why do you think that would be unfortunate?
I think because it's part of the Dwarvish tribalism and representation. I mean, another thing, maybe they'll have at the end when if Battle of Five Armies happens, they have the Dwarven war masks. That's cool if they have that, because the Dwarves were famous for these horrible visages that they wore over their helms, flipped down, and had these really, fearsome masks they were described. And that's great, but I don't see anything of that with at least the main dwarves at this point. But it was a key description. The colored hoods, brightly colored, it was a distinctive trait. It helped identify the different dwarves and relationships to clans and such.
That's really interesting. It kind of brings up the whole question of how color, we see color maybe differently now than maybe a medieval view of color. For example, bright colors were very often used by knights. For one thing, you want to be able to tell who your guys are on the field, so you want bright colors, as well as perhaps us not taking bright colors seriously. We tend to think of yellow and red as McDonald's, and so maybe that's part of it as well. Again, kind of a Tolkien connection. Tom Bombadil, blue and yellow, and so it's hard to imagine them doing that if they had done the Tom Bombadil section of the movies in the Lord of the Rings. How would they have done that and still kept it somewhat serious? It's that playfulness, but at the same time you're like, wow, Tom Bombadil or the Dwarves are not people that you would mess with. So that's perhaps just a difference in how people would film. We've got a better ability to film these movies, but certainly they're going to interpret it in ways that not all of us would agree with.
Yeah, and as some folks are pointing out in the One Ring, they're like, well, only pick nits if there's no complaints about the serious plot deviations and stuff. Just I don't have enough information on that yet to go there. But,
that's true. Probably the plot's more important.
Yeah, they're saying this is, I don't know if it's Cialan or Cialan, C-I-A-L-A-N. I'm going to nitpick less about their appearances if I have serious issues with plot deviations, honestly. I agree with you there on that.
Well, and just one small point on that, and that is this is a hopeful thing. Although the depictions of the dwarves that we can see online now, including the new one this morning, Thorin Oakenshield is actually has been, they've put up his picture as well, so you guys got to go out there and check that out. And certainly, I think one good thing about it is that they're trying to not make the dwarves the butt of the joke. In the Lord of the Rings, Gimli is really the comic relief, isn't he? Never toss a dwarf. Usually he and Legolas, as they're kind of going back and forth. That's right. There's this joking repartee going back and forth, and it's fun. It's part of the movie. But if that's the only way they show dwarves, I would be, for one, pretty disappointed, just because there's more to it. So I am kind of hopeful that maybe they'll change the look of the dwarves, but I think it's going to look for more of a little bit more dignity for the dwarves, a little bit more sense that these guys are, there's a reason why they're to be feared, and why they can go up against orcs and still end up being, they might not be the fastest guys on the planet of Arctic, but they are.
They did do after marrying Pippin.
That's right.
They did.
Gimli did a great job. He probably would have represented the Dwarvish kingdoms in the middle of the Olympics, but that's another topic. Yes, cross country. But they were, strong of endurance, perseverance. This is why they were good at mining. So I'm hoping that we'll see more of that, more of what you got a little picture of in Moria. Amazing. These guys delved deep and did amazing things.
Cialan, Demosthenes, and Legos are all talking about Fili, how his appearance is more roguish-like and
yes,
stuff like that.
Welcome to you from OneRing.net. I was looking at some of your comments earlier and appreciated your comments about each of the dwarves. You guys are being optimistic and positive, and that's great. We want to encourage what they're trying to do, even if we disagree with some of their details.
We can still enjoy it while having hopefully constructive criticism, even if it's not going to change anything.
Absolutely,
it's fun for debate
for sure.
So you're talking about Pasolini, Film Toro, King.
Yeah. Well,
Andy Serkis.
Yeah.
Too, right?
So Andy Serkis is director for Unit 2. He's kind of an assistant director. Hawk. Andy Serkis is going to play a pretty significant role here in this film, as of course Will.
Gracious.
Yes.
Yes.
The other character, the non-paid character. That's right. Tell us what you think about Andy Serkis and just as a person?
Well, I don't know him personally, but
as an
as
actor?
I've observed him, so I saw him also in surprise. I was surprised. I don't know why I was, but in King Kong, he played 2 roles in there. He played one of the ship mates. I think he was the cook or something. He was pretty gross. He's also, which I wasn't sure it was him at first. I was like, is that Andy Serkis? He was a little more filled out and a little scruffed up and had a squint like Popeye. And he was the cook. He was a disgusting cook. And and we got eaten by the giant worm things. Yeah, nice. It was nice touch words. The muffling. It was funny, but he also played King Kong. He was the CGI King Kong.
No way, really?
Yeah, that was looking through the credits. He did the motion, and I thought they just like modeled it on top of like video footage of silverback gorillas because the motions were very. From watching, I'd watched a lot of documentaries and of the apes and stuff like that, and it was quite, that movement was impressive. Yes,
There was like some sort of, I think it was, I don't know if it was a Devil Wears Prada or like some sort of fashion thing where he was like a fashion designer, where he was playing himself.
A fashion designer?
Well, he was like a fashionista.
Okay.
And it was like, because I saw him, like, wait, I know that guy. And it's like, it's Gollum.
Yeah, he also starred in the movie Inkheart, came out a couple years ago, and again a baddie, did a great job there as a main character in the
It
film.
might have been a TV show.
So Andy Serkis is director for Unit 2, and I thought it was really interesting when you look at now that the casting is almost all complete. There's a few people left to cast for sure. Dane has not been cast yet. But as you look at all the different actors, we have a number of returning actors besides Andy Serkis. Of course, Ian McKellen starring as Gandalf, which, again, we're coming to the end of an age where Ian McKellen and even, I know Christopher Lee did not want to fly to New Zealand.
Yeah, well, how old are they now? 70s?
Yeah.
A million years.
These guys.
Maybe Sauron, Christopher Lee, Sauron.
The Astari are
Yes, Russ.
very old.
Yeah, I mean, that's always been a challenge. I kind of remember that from like the Hannibal Lecter movies where they're going back in time.
Right, and he looks older.
And he looks older, and it's
Right.
like, how do you do that?
It's
I
like
mean,
an old actor. Well, that's kind of like with Ian Holm, isn't it? I mean, I think that was wise that they decided that they couldn't take.
use him for the Hobbit.
They couldn't
right?
use him for the Hobbit movie and try to show him as younger.
Well, because he's old. Yeah, right.
Right.
I mean, he's like really Ian Holmes. Well, he's got to be like close to 70.
He's fantastic. I mean, great.
He
great.
is. He's one of my favorite actors of all times. But I mean,
But too old to play young Bilbo.
Ian McKellen was old to start off with in The Lord of the Rings. So I mean,
Yes.
you can kind of work around that.
Right.
But like to go back and do like a young Bilbo with Ian Holmes,
Right.
that would like
That's right.
just wouldn't work.
Gandalf's supposed to be timeless anyway.
Yes.
Kind of like Doctor Who.
Yes. Hugo Weaving coming back as Elrond. Kate Blanchett again as Galadriel. Christopher Lee as Saruman. Orlando Bloom as Legolas. Elijah Wood as Frodo. Of course, that'll be towards the end as they kind of bridge it to The Lord of the Rings. And Ian Holm will reprise an old Bilbo role in the film towards the end there. But a lot of it really is new talent.
I need to interrupt you real quick.
Go ahead.
Our streaming server just hit its limits, so I just had to up the limit. So those of you listening, I'm gonna stop and restart the stream server so we can handle more listeners. So you'll want to reconnect right after you hear this. So
Okay.
I'm stopping it and starting it.
Stay tuned.
Sorry for the technical interruptions here.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Go ahead.
Just
Hey.
hang on, just while I restart it. Sorry. I want to make sure they get it.
Or you could say it and then repeat it so we have time to think about it.
Like
The
waste
BBC
that
radio
cross
show,
country.
is that the one with Orson
Dwarves are
Welles?
natural sprinters. They're not fast, but they're tough.
Was there a Lord of the Rings radio show with Orson Welles?
Remember when the dwarf was running?
Yeah, hold on a second.
Trying to catch up.
Yeah.
He was having a lot of trouble.
Hold on a second, people. Just be a short delay.
Without food or rest.
While you're waiting, be thinking about why Viggo Mortensen will not be starring in
Who's that?
Aragorn.
Oh, right.
Technical difficulties, please stand by. Okay. Stream is back up. Sorry, go ahead, Russ. You had a
The
question.
BBC radio show, was there anybody in that of note? Was Orson Welles, did he just announce it, or, because I remember as a kid, like he was announcing it. That was like my first, after I'd read The Lord of the Rings, that was the first media thing I had of The Lord of the Rings before the animated movie.
Oh, the BBC.
Well, I don't know if was that the only radio show that was done?
That was the first one. There have been other ones.
Okay, then there was a later one. This is like in the late 70s. It was right before the animated movie.
I'm actually not sure about that. That's something that somebody else probably can.
I think Westwood 1 was like...
Did Orson Welles
narrate
part of The Hobbit in the original BBC?
I don't know. That's something we might have to post on the site and find out. Or if anybody in the listening audience knows.
Yeah, speak up out there, all you experts. Okay, so one of the things quickly to touch on before we move on is in terms of the current casting, it's a very international cast. And one thing I thought was interesting, Hawk, was that we have people representing New Zealand. We have actors from Ireland, Scotland, Wales. For example, you've got just in the Dwarves company themselves, you've got Thorin is played by Richard Armitage. He's English, and as well as Adam Brown, who's Ori. Then you've got Dwalin and Balin, who are Scottish actors. You've got Keeley and Boffer, who are played by Irish actors, and then the rest of them are from New Zealand. So really, and then of course we have actors, other characters who are played by Australians, and then we have Bjorn is played by Mikael Persbrandt, who's a Swedish actor. So it's just really broad and interesting. What would you say as far as that? Why does Middle Earth draw such a broad interest?
Well, certainly one of the key aspects, language aside, would be the universal stories of strife and character and every man and all of those are just so many universal messages that make it something that so many people can take on and relate to.
Right.
But then, of course, Tolkien's goal of having an English legendarium, English mythology, that was his goal. And it's gone beyond just England. It's become pretty much all English-speaking nations have been adapting it as it's grown. And you and I talked about that before.
That's right.
Kind of stealing your wind on that because
That's
that was
okay.
your point. But I'm totally in agreement with you about that.
Because the English language is spread around the world in some ways, because I suppose right in the back of the British Empire in the past. Now it's
Well,
the
before
British
that, it was
Empire.
lingua franca.
Right.
Now English is the lingua franca.
But now we have great stories like Lord of the Rings, which are able to then have an impact on the world and bring people together from a lot of different English-speaking backgrounds too. So I'm kind of glad actually that Del Toro, although he's gifted, I think he's better kind of helping from the side. Jackson's able to bring the kind of and of course people like Andy Serkis and others just have the input to make it have more of a connected. So it's more seamless. It'd be hard to have a film that would be very different. Although I know Del Toro felt that this movie, or these two movies, would be really, he thought it was about a loss of innocence. You start with a Shire that's,
totally
it's
low.
very happy and
Yeah, and that's my only concern is it looks like, and it could be wrong, maybe he'll start out cheerful like he did with the beginning of Lord of the Rings with Hobbiton. Hopefully he'll reflect more of that. But so far, at least the Dwarves and such, it has that very heavy dark look to it already. Again, without the colorful hoods, that automatically it's darker. So I'm hoping that again, Peter Jackson loves his horror side. Although we talked about, I don't think he's made any other horror films. He slips in the horror stuff. He did Lord of the Rings. He certainly did it in King Kong. But hopefully he won't get too carried away with that. Because The Hobbit was a lighter story. I mean, anybody who's read it, you read The Hobbit, it's a lighter story. It has its heavy moments. You read The Lord of the Rings, it's a lot heavier. It's a lot darker. Some people have trouble getting through it because it's so dark and heavy.
Right.
The Hobbit really has a strong contrast to the heaviness. And it'd be unfortunate if you just leave it so that everybody else.
Okay.
It'd be really unfortunate if you made The Hobbit as dark as The Lord of the Rings, I think.
Well, because The Hobbit's not an edgy story.
Yeah,
It's got its scary moments. It's got adventure, but it's much more about a quest, isn't it? In some ways, different than Frodo's quest, which is
Well,
much
it's
more
less epic. Like it's less
Right.
world changing. It's a family. For the dwarves, it's epic, but it isn't as far reaching to all of the free world.
Exactly.
Is that the Virgin?
It's a pretty small. We
It's
must
this-
await
yeah.
our break of day to seek
Yeah.
our long forgotten gold.
Right, and it's a specific group, and yeah, it is a quest. It's an
Yeah.
adventure, but it's less epic. And the closest thing that's epic is the Battle of Five Armies. And of course, any dragon makes it seven, but it's still not the scale. It's much smaller.
Well, in the dragon alone, I think that's really interesting because, of course, we didn't have any dragons in the Lord of the Rings because at that point, really, all the dragons had been killed or were no longer near enough to pose any threat. So
Yeah.
this is one thing that'll be new about these movies is we have an honest-to-goodness dragon.
Right.
Or honest-to-badness. So, another innovation, if you didn't know this already, is that Jackson is he's chosen to film the Hobbit movies, 2 movies, The Unexpected Journey and There and Back Again, probably breaking it at the death of Smaug. That it'll break it somewhere right there in the middle and then do it in 2 parts. But he's filming it in 48 frames. Usual speed is 24 frames per second, and he's going to be doing
Or
it
30.
Or 30, but they're going to be doing it 48. I suspect the reason for that is really because they decided to go with 3D, and
Right.
he doesn't want that kind of disorienting loss of.
When it moves quickly. And
Yeah.
stuff, yeah.
So they want to be
That's
able
good.
to
I'm glad
have the
that-
richness there.
I really, really, really just like this trend of late in films to speed up combat by, they slow down the camera to speed up the combat, but it's really obvious they slow down the camera. So that, in real life, the actor's doing this. It looks like they're doing, a fast swing, and all they do is slow down the film, but it shows. You can tell, and I really don't like that style. A quick note: somebody in the chat room, Demosthenes, is asking any thoughts on Thorin.
Ooh, good question.
I mean, he's
Well,
key.
one thing, just quick, but I want to hear
Yeah.
your thoughts on it. Having looked at the picture, and of course we don't know a lot right now, some of the early comments I know on him is that he doesn't look very old. Although he has to, kind of as an actor, he really has to show a strength and a vitality that's going to lead these dwarves towards, as one person put it in I know in one ring, we've got to be convinced that this guy can actually lead a group of dwarves to take back, Lonely Mountain from this dragon and get their treasure back. So it can't be somebody who's, a dwarf with a walker, okay? Because that's, he's not going to be able to take it. So
At least not till after the Battle of Five Armies.
then he's got the walker. So
he's-
how
yeah.
do you communicate that sense of he's the oldest dwarf of the company, and yet he's got that strength? So I think that's probably why they didn't show him with gray hair. But I think we have an audience question here, a comment. Go ahead.
I think the portrayal of Thorin is kind of old and weary is largely, in our consciousness anyway, comes from that Rankin Bass cartoon.
Okay, so
He was still hardy and hale, but he was gray, wasn't
let's
he?
repeat.
White?
Let's repeat the comment there.
Okay.
So go ahead and say it louder.
The depiction of Thorin is kind of an old, weary, graybeard, I think comes from that cartoon. The
So he's
Rankin
not,
Bass
I don't
cartoon.
remember, but so he's not depicted as having a gray beard or anything?
He might, in an early part of The Hobbit, there's a line where he's talking about how he's taken to working metal like steel.
Right, yeah,
instead of
in hard work,
gold to
yeah.
keep himself
Right.
strong.
Oh yeah, he's fit. He's very fit.
So your point basically is that maybe our thought of Thorin being very old isn't
Yeah.
just because it mentions it in the Hobbit, but also because of that Rankin Bass kind of association of this is a man who walks very slow, or a dwarf that moves very slowly, and has is very wrinkled and totally white hair.
Yeah.
That's an interesting thought.
We are super cool.
Yeah.
We all grew up, well, a lot of us grew up with that movie.
Right. Well, some people can have white hair and still look
Yeah, I've
younger.
had friends in their 20s. Their hair it was quite gray. So yeah, it's who knows. Yes, Brennan.
I was wondering, are they going to make 2 movies? If it's the first movie's going to end with Death of Smaug, that's roughly like 3/4 of the book already.
Right. It sounds like they may be filling in because there's the whole journey back, and there's a brief blurb about it. It was, adventures of his own and
But
blah
there
blah
was,
blah.
there was nothing about
Yeah,
it.
it's where he gets to have creative license to fill in the blanks.
So there's a fourth of the book he's going to put in the second movie, but then he's just going to fill in the way back.
Yeah, and one of the things that what they can do is that they can definitely take things that are mentioned at the beginning of the Fellowship of the Ring that are
Right.
before Frodo and Bilbo's birthday, when it talks about Bilbo during that 60 years between The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings, getting, how that happens where he doesn't look any older, and see that's when they can take that piece, as well as remember the parts in the Council of Elrond, which are mentioned in the Fellowship of the Ring also, where there's the hunt for Gollum, which we watched the fan film yesterday. These are things which they can say, okay, they happen between, and we can include that in the second half. Probably we'll have Aragorn looking the watch for on the Shire, where they're starting to realize, and that's where the darkness, I think, will start to come in. Hopefully, first movie will be much more lighthearted with some danger, and then moving towards the danger of the goblins, then Smaug, and then second movie, I think it's going to be definitely that, almost, if I dare make the comparison, Star Wars 3-ish. There's an escalation in the suspense, and of course now what's going to be happening because we've already watched this. This is a prequel, so that's how they'll fill in the second movie. If that answers your question.
Go ahead, Brian.
Just one more question. Why don't they just crack down on the story of 2 movies and only make it about the Hobbit story? They do an extremely good job.
Does he explain that at all? Because I think it would be easy to make 2 movies out of what's there, but.
Well, that's a great question. Why make 2 movies instead of?
Because if you
Revenue? Yeah.
What?
Revenue?
No. You can still make 2 movies out of this exact same story. Because you figure you have the voyage out of the Shire, you have the trolls, you have Rivendell the first time, you have the Misty Mountains and the orcs,
right?
You have the escape of the orcs and then Gollum.
In the eagle, right?
Okay, then
Finding
you have
the
the eagle,
right.
the ring, then you have the eagles,
Yep.
then you have Bjorn,
right?
then you have the Mirkwood adventure, falling asleep, and then the spiders and all
Sure.
that. Then you have the Elven King,
Right.
being prisoner there, and all the time with the barrels and drunkenness, and then the barrels down the river. Then you have Dale itself getting psyched up and trying to work out to go into Lonely Mountain. Then you have the actual trying to get into Lonely Mountain. Then you have Smaug and that interaction with Bilbo, and then Smaug flying up and attacking Dale, and then the dwarves going into the mountain, and then you have the thrush and getting the arrow, and then the mountain,
Right.
the dragon being taken out, and then you have the men of Dale and then the
Right.
elves all coming and holding siege, and you have that whole interaction going back and forth, and then you have Gandalf and Bilbo betraying Thorin with the Arkenstone,
yes.
and all of that, and then you have the Battle of 5 Armies. All of that is in the books.
That's enough for 2
You
movies.
can easily get 2 movies with that. And
Well, and it's not really clear for sure. I mean,
because that's hours and hours of stuff.
it's not clear where they'll break it. It might be earlier. It's just been suggested that one of the places that they might break the films will be at the Death of Smaug. Could be earlier. Yes.
Hey, do you know approximately how long the first movie's gonna be?
Nobody knows because he won't even know till he's gone through and edited and
Long.
those things. You just
I didn't
don't
know.
I would assume it.
Unless they
2.5,
try to
3
market
hours.
it, if they try to market it for a PG rating, which I don't know if they'll go PG.
Is there a
rating.
duration thing for PG rating?
No, but if you're gonna have an attention span issue,
Yeah, I doubt he'll probably do PG-13 because he'll probably compact.
probably yeah.
on that.
So I'm guessing probably again 2.5. Maybe director's
And
cut.
orcs are scary in the caves,
Sure.
and the trolls are scary. 3 trolls this time, but now they get to talk instead of looking like a little baby-faced reject of a troll.
Yes.
I hope they're like.
See, this is about the orcs in Misty Mountains. They get their
They're
piece
goblins.
here. They're not Urukai.
Yeah, exactly.
We're the northern versions.
But the trolls should be. There's 3 of them, and they need to talk.
Yeah. Oh, the trolls. Sorry. Yes.
The trolls that capture them.
That'll be
button to it.
That'll be good.
Yeah, because they can't just.
There's a lot of background. I hope that they can flesh out, just because it would be fun to more about the trolls. And of course, the trolls cave is where they find the swords Glamdring and Orcrist and Sting, and that's a very brief mention of it in the Hobbit.
As I say, they could make up a whole bunch for the second movie, but I hope they do some. I hope they fill in some of the gaps of the second movie that are only alluded to. But I hope they really put in what's in the book. Don't throw Bjorn out.
No.
You know, like they did Bombadil. I know it's not critical, but
Well, they've got
it's
the
a
cast
great
already,
part.
so we're
Oh, good.
We're
Good.
for sure doing that.
Well, hopefully it doesn't have the cutting floors.
Yeah, like the Scouring of the Shire kind of thing.
Right, yeah, exactly. Go ahead there, Christian.
Well, do you think they're going to use some of the same things that they did in the Lord of the Rings? Like, for example, Frodo had Sting in the Lord of the Rings, and
This would be where Bilbo acquires it.
Like the
Yeah,
same
that's-
props, you mean?
Yeah.
Definitely.
It's a Weta workshop and everything.
Yeah, they're
so-
using the same workshop, and in fact, even some of the same sets, like
Yeah.
Rivendell, they'll be using a lot of those. There was a question from
Yes,
back there.
David.
David.
I remember it. With the, if they're going to split them, it would make sense that they could take a good climactic moment just cinematically, because otherwise, are people really going to want to watch that if it just kind of fades out at like a flashing point? I mean,
Yeah.
I guess you could maybe end with the destruction of Lake Town, like if Smog's flying over and blasting everything and so on. That might be an end point. The death of Smog seems realistic. It also seems weird to start with like the Battle of Five Armies, because that's gonna, people are used to that ending.
That's true.
And then all of a sudden, okay, that's our start.
I think it wouldn't be unrealistic to end it with them imprisoned in the Elven, the king's
Seriously?
place. No, I mean, if you're going to look for a middle, or the spiders in Mirkwood, if you're looking for a middle point to leave a cliffhanger, but so that you can cut it in half roughly, so you have stuff to come back.
But you still have to leave room in the second film for a half an hour of Aragorn hunting for Gollum, and Gollum actually being
Which I don't
going
think
to
would be that much of a
Mordor.
problem. I mean,
And then-
depending on how far you push it, but
Sure.
I don't know.
The
It
White
depends on
Council.
how much there's going to make
We have
up.
Dol Guldur. We haven't mentioned that yet. The White Council. One of the great things to look forward to in these films is that what's hinted at in The Hobbit will be fleshed out, and that there will be the White Council, the wizards plus Galadriel. We have and Radagast.
So
along
I think
with-
he's going to put all that in. Does
it's-
he list all
yes. They are going to do. They are going to
Let's
cast
see.
out the Necromancer from Dol Guldur at this point.
It's a major event. They need a third movie for all the
Well-
pictures of them doing that.
No,
I
because
wouldn't mind that.
Yeah, I mean, third was better.
Well, it should have been 13 movies.
well,
Each 3 hours and 45 minutes.
we're coming to the last section here. Did you want to? Since somebody mentioned marketing, that's maybe a question we could talk
Oh,
about.
yeah.
Anything to hop on there, Hawk, about marketing?
Okay, so jumping into role-playing gaming. Now, you just talked about the Necromancer. Of course, we just been playing a campaign. It's near the end here. I don't know how much of you realize the Necromancer of Dol Guldur played in your adventure against all their enemies with the King of the Trees. How much of the machinations are related to that, if that's come up yet. If you don't yet, it should get explained at the end. For game masters.
I think all my players understand what's going on.
Okay. You realize you have a useful NPC to use at the end to explain what was going on in the background if it hasn't already been figured out.
So Dol Guldur.
That
yes.
is in there.
The Necromancer's got his fingers
his
in all
fingers
the
are
pies.
everywhere. Yeah. So although we're playing a different time period, we're playing Third Age 2262, the year before Gandalf first chased the Necromancer, aka Sauron, out of Dol Guldur.
Right.
The
So
first time, and then the long walk, peaceful watch.
Right.
So we were playing a campaign a lot earlier.
Right. So Dol Guldur really has that association still with from the previous time.
Well, a lot of that's why the Shadow of Mirkwood got so bad, is because that.
Because it used to be called Green with the
Green with the
Great.
Great, with Fangorn, and all of it was covered, Rovenia, and all that was covered in insurance. So role-playing gaming news, for those of you who do not already know, Cubicle 7 last year acquired the role-playing gaming license for the Lord of the Rings role-playing game. And Cubicle 7 has put out a lot of games. They announced they're supposedly going to come out with like 80 to 100 and something new titles between this year and next year between all their different ventures. They have a lot of different projects going on. But they've been working on the Lord of the Rings one, releasing little tidbits of info since last year. They've really started to crank out stuff the last 2 months, cranking out screenshots and little descriptions and tidbits on their website. And it's supposed to come out this August, so just a month from now. The new licensed Tolkien role-playing game is supposed to come out. Looks like it's pretty simplified. They're talking about only 4 stats, main characteristics, but we'll see how the final version comes out. And tried to get some promotional material, but emails went into the ether. So really don't have any extra info on it besides what's available. But they are already, Merlin's, which is the local game store, and other game stores already in their game catalogs. They have it in the catalog. You can actually see a Cubicle 7 Lord of the Rings, the One Ring game. And it's set between the events of The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings time period.
Great.
Because there's a lot going on then.
Great.
And so they set it right around that time period. And their website goes into pretty good detail. It's not long after The Hobbit, if I remember correctly.
Okay.
When this stuff happened.
And I know the video game rights expired for Electronic Arts in 2008. So currently it's Warner Brothers, I believe, that have the PlayStation rights to the Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit, for video games.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, we've already got like 5 or 6 on the PlayStation 2 was
Exactly.
Jonathan's been playing here. So.
Yeah, and of course more collectibles, more figurines. There should be some good ones out there. And I guess Weta has these figurines, and there's one. It has a stamp on it that in the Weta cave, their actual workshop there.
Yeah.
And
stamp of authenticity.
Exactly, like you can only get these
Well, they're gonna
if
ask
you go to
them,
New Zealand.
If Games Workshop does more miniatures, for gaming and stuff,
Yeah.
please bring the prices down.
Yeah.
I would buy all of them if they were half the price.
Anybody from Weta
Instead,
listening,
I'm like
please
not
remember that.
buying any unless they're on half price or something. So,
I think their rationale is they raise the prices every year till.
well, my understanding talking to the game shops is they actually charge other countries a lot less. In
Oh,
the US
yeah.
they charge like double.
They do.
But if you're caught as a game store buying it from out of the country and then selling it, you're going to lose your license to sell the product.
They're
But they're
very-
selling it for half the price in other countries.
Yeah, they're.
So it's not going to break them to. I don't know why they're, supply and demand against. But I'm not buying them. I would buy all of them if they were half the price. So I'm not buying
Ooh,
them.
we have questions.
They're
We have a bunch of them. Go ahead, Russ.
they're very protective of their license. Like if
Their
like
license,
if
yeah.
if a store offers like 30% or 40% off on like Games Workshop stuff, they'll lose their license.
Right. Hey, anybody know what happened to Mithril Miniatures? Did they lose their license, or do they still have their own version? I think theirs are based on the books, versus the Games Workshop ones seem to be based on the movies.
I sold much of those heritage miniatures.
I love the Mithril miniature.
The ones from the animated one.
Anybody know if they're still around? Anybody online?
Yes, we've got
questions.
We've got some questions from.
Let me get a few here, and then we'll answer a question from Halion. Go ahead there, Christian. I'll get to you next, Jonathan.
I was gonna say that we're lucky that Games Workshop doesn't make us pay more for their miniatures, because in Canada
They're plastic.
in Canada they're actually making them pay more. And
But what about the dollar difference?
The dollar in Canada is worth.
It's not as big as it used to be right now.
the dollar in Canada is actually still worth more, and there's stuff, and they're actually charging them still more, even though their dollar's worth more.
Could be worse.
That's
I guess.
ridiculous. Well, I'm a person who spent thousands of dollars on gaming stuff, and I'm not buying their products because I think they've gone beyond reasonable. If those were metal miniatures in there for that price, I'd go, okay, that's fine. But for the price they're selling them at, I'm not buying them, except for when I find them for half price, as I did. And then that's a reasonable thing. So they're selling them for $30. I'm willing to spend 15 to 20. And I don't know. And there's got to be other people out there, and other people feel the same. I know tons of people that would love to buy Games Workshops, and almost nobody I know has them. And I know a lot of Tolkien gamers, and almost none of them will buy them because they're about twice what they're willing to pay. They bring them to half, they're going to get more sales, but whatever. Go ahead, Jonathan.
I think I've seen them in a couple different stores, but the metal ones at Hobbytown are better than the plastic ones at Walmart.
Well, I got the
They
plastic
still
ones.
charge
I got the
more.
plastic ones at Hobbytown, and they're
Yeah.
they're like I got them half
And
price.
then
so.
kind of like Star Wars figurines, way up in price.
Not highest quality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Halion says,
This is on the.
what do you mooters, so Tolkien mooters, used to be merpers, now we're mooters, do we think it's possible that the first film will end with the attack on Bill Golder, and so that the necromancer will kind of be the villain of the first film and Smaug of the second?
That's awesome.
Because that's right, Gandalf left. That's why he was there to help the dwarves, because he went to go deal with Bill Golder.
Where does Gandalf leave them in the
He
first?
leaves them at Rivendell, right?
No, it's before that, isn't it?
I thought it was
No,
in
because
this.
he helps them in the mountains. When was it he left for a while? Was it after Bjorn? Yeah, Mirkwood.
Mirkwood.
They're
that's
without
right.
him in Mirkwood. So
Yeah.
after Bjorn, he leaves because it's Mirkwood, but he's got business to the south, and that'd be Golguldur.
Okay, so technically,
So they could
because of
potentially.
the split time thing, they
Yeah,
could deal with
the
Golguldur
dwarves you could have
first.
the dwarves caught by the spiders,
Or in
and
the
at the
opposite
same time the battle of Golguldur.
And then second movie.
And then the second movie continues from that cliffhanger.
Ooh, that's interesting.
So
Yeah.
that's what you think, David?
I
I
hope
just think,
they
yeah,
do
that'd be
that. That's
nice.
awesome.
How many of the Mooters think that that would be a good place to divide it?
As long as they
About half.
keep
Yeah, 2/3.
Those who
the
care.
main details out.
So we give you a 60% rating.
Let's see anybody else in
Thanks,
One Ring.
thanks, Haley.
Demosthenes has never even done Merp or played any Lord of the Rings games.
That's okay.
That's fine. We do all of it. Jonathan here brought the Lord of the Rings Monopoly set. Yesterday I brought the new Hobbit set from Fantasy Flight Games. Some women who came by and checked out Tolkien who tried that out. They felt a little overwhelmed by it, but they had fun anyway. And then of course we had the usual role playing. And then of course playing the PS2 games there. And so it's covering a range. What else do we have here? We still have a little bit more time since we started late. Sure. What else do we have? Okay. Oh yes, John.
I actually looked up on the Mithril miniatures for you.
Yeah.
And they did actually release Thorin III in May.
Okay, so they're still able to do the book-based miniatures,
Yes.
right? They can't do the Peter Jackson-based. That's my understanding is that the Mithril miniatures is book-based license, and I don't know if that's coming through Enterprises or if that's directly from the estate. Because
Yeah.
the estate owns the book license.
This is so thorny.
It's so confusing.
It's very difficult.
And then and maybe somebody online knows better than we do. The Games Workshop can do the Peter Jackson kind of stuff.
That's it. The licensing itself,
Oh, hey Frank. Aldmir says that United Cutlery is losing the license for the replica weaponry. And he's asking, do you know who will be picking up the line?
Oh, wow.
Because Frank brought his Aragorn cutlery, the cutlery sword with the built-in knife and everything. So yeah, that's interesting. Frank does does a bunch of chainmail jewelry and everything.
They're probably
He's
using,
one of the
I wonder if they're
members.
losing the license just because it was a time, it was a
Yeah, the
limited
licenses they've been
license.
limited. It's not like they used to do where they gave like Iron Enterprise had the license forever. So then they had to do some nasty things to get the license. What's that?
It's a limited production run, is what it is.
You're allowed to make this many,
Yeah. So now somebody else has to step up.
which is
Yeah. Go ahead, Christian.
Well, like I said, I asked before, will they be using the same props in the movie? But if for example, Sting, if the United Cutlery uses
The props were not
license-
made by United.
No, that's better.
Okay.
No, the props were made by, I used to know the guy's name. He's a New Zealand-based swordsman.
Okay.
All the original weapons were made by him
Oh, okay.
in New Zealand.
in
All right.
New Zealand.
All right.
Which is kind of a tidbit because New Zealand isn't famous for their medieval reproductions.
Right.
But,
Right. Yeah. They are now.
but since the Lord of the Rings, that man's website.
Yeah. Well, the whole country. I mean, this has had a huge economic impact on the
Well,
entire country.
In fact, can I just interject? Frank, go ahead. And
I looked at his website and he's had to go so far as to put on his website that he cannot make any Lord of the Rings-ish reproductions because it's under license
Right.
to the movies.
He doesn't want to get in trouble.
Right,
And just so everybody realizes how complicated this can be and how careful you have to be. One of the other problems besides the lawsuits in being able to get the Hobbit film made is that even once they green lighted it in September last fall, the Actors Union in New Zealand went on strike.
Oh, yeah.
And part of it was because it's like they don't have the power that maybe actors guilds would in other parts of the world. So they were saying, hey, let's have some more representation here. Don't work until you get higher pay. But it came to the point where Peter Jackson actually was looking at seriously moving
England there,
or Eastern Europe,
yeah.
and finding a different location.
It was really close, and then
there were so many, so many Kiwis.
Well, it affected the whole country.
This could be $1.5 billion lost in revenue. So the Prime Minister of New Zealand actually got involved in talks with the head of the film companies, and they worked it out.
That was quite the drama. Well, you know you've had an impact on your country when.
Minister
Like,
Thorin.
that pales, people complain about Hollywood's influence on Congress in the States, but that's,
What did Rupert Murdoch have to say about that?
Oh, I don't know, but he's probably got it tapped.
Seriously, what do you know of New Zealand before Lord of the Rings?
A lot of sheep.
Before Lord of the Rings, nobody ever heard anything of New Zealand. They might have a footnote on some panoramic views.
Yeah, they put it on the map.
But actually, that's a good thing because that's probably the very reason why it's so unspoiled. And a lot of great scenery you're going to be able to use. I go on, if you haven't yet, go on to the Hobbit Film Studio blog. I don't remember the website URL, but it's got another video clip on there, and it shows him. It's like 10 minutes, and it shows actually looking for scenery to shoot in their fleet of 10 odd helicopters, flying around New Zealand. So that's pretty cool.
They have a lot of interesting information on the director's cuts, DVDs, where you have all the extras and stuff. I love watching those.
Yeah, that's great. The Maori tribesmen, those guys as the orcs, some of them.
Yeah, they have all kinds of nifty
Big guys.
information on there.
Oh yeah.
Didn't the Xena and Hercules shows, weren't those filmed there too?
They were.
Yes. I think so. Yeah, I think so. I'm not sure.
Brennan?
So Michael would know if he could get on.
So I know. It is true. They were filmed there.
Yes,
Okay.
they were.
All right, thanks. This has been confirmed that Xena and Hercules were filmed in New Zealand. Thank you.
All right. So what are the odds
Thank you,
of
Kate.
this any cut of
Good
The
to know
Hobbit
that.
being released once it's, both of those are made?
Oh, for sure. I'm sure there'll be things they won't be able to include in the theatrical versions that they'll want to include.
So it might make some gaps if they don't include all the story.
That's true.
Make it all the
Definitely.
reason.
This day and time, they produce director's cuts for everything now.
Oh yeah. You should have seen.
First the regular release,
I mean,
then
look
the
at-
extended release, then the extended director's cut release.
I mean,
then
look
the
at
platinum
the
release.
original Lord of the Rings movies in the movie theaters. They were what, just under three hours.
Yeah.
On the director's cut, they're just
3
over
hours,
4
45
hours.
minutes, yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Well, and they just finished filming block 1. They have 3 blocks to film for these 2 movies.
Yeah, 200 and something days of shooting.
Left. And Andy Serkis looks fried.
Yeah,
Jackson's
they're all
like, Jackson's
again.
like, he said,
Well, this is even when he was
he
not
said,
looking for
once I
it.
start getting exhausted, I just pretty much stay exhausted for the rest of the film.
Yeah, he just gets used to it's that numb, exhausted state.
All the actors get a break off until September this year.
Because they're in front of the camera.
Yeah, exactly.
You can't have them totally dead on their feet.
I'd hate to be Andy Serkis because he's got to act and do
Yeah,
directing.
yeah, he's definitely got a love, but he seems to be, a little bit workaholic, so in a good way.
So yeah, that merchandising, I think that there's that whole question of is it tasteful or not. I know George Lucas was shameless in his merchandising for Star Wars.
Merchandising yogurt. That's a reference to Spaceballs and
Yes.
There's a fatal money is made.
How
well,
much?
yeah.
Yeah.
Does it?
Oh,
Mel
yeah,
Brooks.
but Mel Brooks.
Mel Brooks does this
Yeah.
yogurt instead of
Kids love this.
Yoda.
Yeah, and then he
And
pulls.
it's merchandising and pulls this big thing out of T-shirts and everything.
Yeah.
Yes, Christian.
Do you think there will ever be a parody made of Lord of the Rings in that fashion?
There already are. Maybe not Mel Brooks. There's already many on YouTube.
Oh, wow.
We played it at a Tolkien Society meeting earlier this month. How the Lord of the Rings should have ended.
It's a
And
great.
It starts and it's done in like flash animation.
You should watch it.
Yeah, you gotta watch it. Oh yeah, I'll do it for our listening audience.
Well, actually, there's
Zoom
a
in
long
on-
and hallowed tradition of Tolkien's.
Oh yeah, Lord of the Rings.
Lord of the Rings, I think, is the original.
Yeah, there are multiple documentaries and spoofs and it's a hoot. Yes, there, Jonathan.
Haven't they also sold a ton of weaponry and like armor from Lord of the Rings online?
Oh yeah.
I think that's
merchandise big time.
My argument would be that's tasteful merchandising. I think that's great. It's the Lord of the Rings boxers and Q-tips or whatever. I mean that's what I have a problem with.
Bobblehead.
Yeah.
They did it.
Okay,
They did
no, they did?
They did. They did bobblehead Frodo. So
Bobblehead Frodo. It's wrong.
Yeah, it was.
It's wrong and unnatural.
Yeah, it should be like original, like how hard they worked on that weaponry and that armor for all the different weapon companies. It was a lot of work, and like the figurines should reflect the book and all the details in there with the armor and merchandise.
Yeah, that was the whole wonderful thing about United Cutlery.
Yeah.
They make quality stuff.
Yeah.
So it's not like cheap stuff. And there's a
They
lot of
made
companies
like
that have
12
made
billion.
there's a lot of companies that have made cheap knockoffs.
Yeah.
And that's where the merchandising really gets crazy because, you know, a United Cutlery sword will go for $300-400.
And that's Tolkien Enterprises, aka Middle-earth Enterprises. They control all that marketing licensing. And it's,
That's to me
they're the
that's
ones
the
that make all
sad
the
part
gap-
when they
yeah.
allow all this cheap knockoff stuff to hit the market.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
Yeah, for those who weren't aware, Tolkien Enterprises last year changed their name, the Science Company, from Tolkien Enterprises to Middle-earth Enterprises. Now, I think one good thing about that is I think it reduces some of the confusion about the Tolkien estate.
Yeah, it's not the Tolkien estate.
Because the Tolkien estate is the family, and they're the ones who have all the book rights. But they sold the movie and marketing, and it's a worldwide, unlimited, never expiring license
Should've never done that.
to all the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit movie and merchandising rights.
So those guys
back
are
in
getting
the
filthy,
70s.
filthy rich.
Saul Zane's company, yeah. And all they exist for is licensing the lawsuits. They don't do anything to add to the intellectual thing.
Oh no! They've started.
But
They've started. Well, no. Oh, you're right. They are.
the Tolkien estate Tolkien estate has a lot of
has
Christopher Tolkien.
a charity now called
Yeah.
the Tolkien Trust.
Right, Tolkien
And
Trust. That's a whole other
That's
story.
what the lawsuit was from. Was actually
Right,
from them
right.
saying they didn't get the piece of the pie that they were promised, which they thought was only appropriate since it represents
Yeah.
the family of that author.
Albert says, Lord of the Rings Q-tips? I want some.
Wow, we could really go with that. You know, they could be. Wouldn't they be fashioned?
No, please, let's not go down
You know, it
this
could be
road.
like
Please.
the double ended like axes,
No,
little
no.
Dwarven Q-tips.
I want Lord of the Rings Band-Aids.
Lord of the Rings band so
Those are dead.
The kids would love them. The little
Frisbees, Lord of the Rings
Black
Frisbees.
Ice Spaceballs, the kids will love them.
Right, yes, yes.
Okay.
Okay, we need to start getting wrapped up here. What
Well-
else do we have to cover up? Or cover
One of the
up?
things that, well, the theme for Tolkien Moot, Hawk, bring it
Yes.
back full circle here. Theme for the Tolkien Moot
Okay, the
this
theme
year.
for Tolkien Moot this year, because we didn't get to broadcast, although the video is available for download on both Facebook under Tolkien Scholars or on the Tolkien Moot website. I did a speech on Tolkien and his love of trees and the environment. The reason why the theme happened this year is the UK Tolkien Society, the end of this July, is doing their annual, what do they call it? It's not a convention, they have a name for it, but they do an annual gathering or so where they read essays on a particular topic. They do a call for papers, and then they do this. And so they're reading. They asked people to send in letters on Tolkien and trees. And I just so happens I wrote an essay on this back in 2007, self-published it through Other Minds magazine, but that's kind of self-published, sort of. And so I submitted that to them for review. They liked it, and they offered to have me come out to York, England, and read the paper. I got 3 boys, a little bit of a challenge to go out to England. So they said they would have it read in absentia. So they're going to do it at the end of the month with other papers. And then they're going to publish those papers that are read in some sort of bundle that can be purchased.
And it's a seminar. Tolkien,
Seminar, the Tolkien
Society seminars.
That's it.
And,
What's the date exactly on that?
30th of July
30th of July.
at Bar
It's just one
Convent,
day,
York, and it's the title is
And it's
Tolkien's
not
Trees.
broadcast, and they don't record it. And maybe next year they will. I was talking to them like, well, I have this, we can see if we can help out with that.
No machines, please. No machines.
So many thanks to them. So I figured, well, let's definitely the theme this year. Each year we've done a theme. Last year was elves, and we had an elvish singer with Rtea. Year before that, we kind of went in different directions on that year. I forget if we had a theme on that one. Year before that was dwarves.
Yeah. Year before
but we had John D. Ratliff there and such, and we had dwarves. And year before that, we had a couple of years there of Numenorians, Dunedain and Numenorians. So, because I've written a bunch of stuff on the Numenorians for the Numenor Project. So, I did the talk. Again, the video's available. The adventure is about trees are heavily involved. Tolkien, absolutely loved trees as much as other people love animals, and felt the trees were more defenseless and needed someone to stand up for them. And he felt he did that in a number of his stories, both Middle-earth related and non-Middle-earth related.
Yeah, Forest
The
Runaways.
yeah, the Ents, the Hjorns, Old Man Willow, all of that. Definitely a common
Treebeard,
So.
Well, and how appropriate, really, for us, because.
And I'm wearing the white tree. I mean, the white tree,
Gondor,
Numenor. Of course, the trees of the before the sun and the moon.
Yep.
Telperion and such, the gold and silver.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and we're in the
everywhere.
We're in the Pacific Northwest, and you know we have
yeah.
forests around us. We're blessed that way. You know, mountains nearby. And so I think it's especially appropriate to be able to recognize that and say, you know, Tolkien had a connection there. He wasn't so much an environmentalist as someone who saw the wanton destruction of.
Right. He wasn't against development per se,
Right.
but just the really nasty stuff.
So
we've been working together with it.
Right. And Tolkien treating time, it's interesting also looking at how, just a little segue here into looking at the way that Tolkien's stories are kind of vaguely medieval or Dark Age, but at the same time timeless. It's not really nailed down to one period of time in history, in our history at least.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I don't know if you guys, what you think about that, but I wonder why is it that we're so fascinated with past times? Why is it that Tolkien's story has more appeal to us rather than if say, were happening with similar types characters and quests in, say, maybe the 1900s or something?
You mean if people were reading them then?
Yeah. Well, no. I meant
or
if it was
he
cast
set them in that time.
just like Shakespearean plays.
Right. Do you think it would have the magical qualities, or do you mean just a more modern?
I think we tend to look at that time as more magical, don't we? Whether it
well,
was
I mean, we're talking about 1900s.
No, looking back at the Middle Ages.
Yeah, Middle Ages. We do because of the legends and the myth and
Sure.
such. That's where we associate. I just want to say real quick for those who don't see in the webcam, we're talking about the trees. I was talking about. We were all pointing the tree. Of course, you can't see that over the audio. Thanks to Lynn who makes Renaissance clothing and such.
Lynn Burns.
Lynn Burns. She made a Renaissance dress for Katie, and she made for me a Numenorian outfit. It's a black tunic with the white tree of Numenor and the 7 stars over it, and a nice fluffy shirt and all. And
very good.
Many cakes,
Looks great.
all of it. So those who are on the webcam, there it is.
That's right.
And of course, this is being recorded on video and audio, so I'll get these up on the website ASAP.
Absolutely.
For those who are able to tune in.
Little plug for next year?
Next year, okay. Next year, now those here in the local audience know this, but for online, next year we've already signed a contract to be at the Beaux-Arts Mansion here in North Spokane. It's a 1913 English Tudor style mansion. The entire grounds will be ours for 3 days. That means we get the mansion, the bedrooms. The bedrooms can be, you can actually spend the night in them for, about $25-30 a night. There's 15 of those bedrooms, and then there's a dorm building that has another 45 rooms with bunk beds in them. So you can handle about another 60 or so people there without the same rate, potentially. And then, of course, there's a few hotels around here, and like Daventry is really inexpensive and such. And that's all near, really close to where we are right now. So that's going to be April 20th, 21st, and 22nd at the Beaux-Arts Mansion. I will be, shortly after I finish getting everything from this Moot uploaded next few days, I will then be putting up all the information for that. And I'm going to try to get the RSVP form for that soon as a tentative RSVP, because this is the last year we're doing Tolkien Moot for free, one way or another. 7 years of doing it for free, of doing it out of pocket. It has been many thousands of dollars and a lot of work, and we're finally going to go to the next level. So we're incorporating as a nonprofit. We're going to file for a 501c3 so that donations can be tax deductible. Going to try to get interns to help as an addition to regular volunteers, get actual dedicated interns from local universities, rec management majors, computer science majors.
Well, that would be great
all
for
sorts.
April, since we're having it in the spring.
Right, so they can get credit, and it's just on a weekend. It's a 3-day weekend, and they can get credit. I did this a few years ago, MortCon 3, Tolkien Moot, 2007. I had 5 guest speakers, and I had a bunch of volunteers. And that really helped a lot. That was the best I ever had with help, where I was able to just delegate a lot more of it and not kill myself trying to get everything done. as much.
Right.
And because several of those people, I had to grade them. The university, I told the university about it, and they got credit hours for volunteer work that they're supposed to get related to their management and recreation and other activities. So that was great. So we're going to go to the next level and try to get actual interns for that. And it'll be unpaid internships, but they get graded, and that should be helpful for getting some real reliable work.
We'd love to help.
We want to try to shoot for at least 50 people next year, so it's still small. The facilities could handle overnight about 60 people. If indoors, probably about up to 100. Outdoors, if we include the garden area, because they do a lot of Wednesdays, they can handle 200 people outdoors. But I'm nervous about April doing outdoors. It's pretty rainy here.
Yeah.
So I really don't. Next year we're just shooting for 50. The cap will be based a lot on how many game masters we get to run tables, how many other venues we line up with other people, so that we have enough to keep people entertained and managed and not have it. I will not let this turn into like Spokon's reputation of a lot of things being chaotic and both people trying to run it and things being all over the place and people running down the halls and security guards being called and all these things happening. I do not want this to get that crazy. I don't want us to ever grow beyond our capacity to keep it a nice, orderly, fun event. And that's why we're not going to suddenly jump up to 100 people next year probably. We're going to try to double it from where we are now. 30 people,
Well,
about
that's
50, 60
perfect
people.
We gotta
Well,
grow it
I
there.
think in the year after that, because also we'll have the space outdoors, and in the summertime there'll be more room then.
Well, and you need all the people
And
who
we have
actually
to,
help.
and we have to iron all this out. We're going to be getting our incorporation. We're going to be getting people established.
Yeah.
It's going to take time to work all this out.
And
So-
hopefully there'll be a couple of events as well for the community. People can come in who aren't role players but would really be interested.
Right. Well, we have a few. We want to get more.
Have a
of
guest
the
speaker. We'll see
non-role-playing, yeah.
where that goes. So
Yeah.
stay tuned to the Tolkien Moot website.
Yep. And we were talking about, what were we talking about? Doing some little promos between now and then, maybe.
Yep.
So we'll let you know in future middle of radio shows and on the Tolkien website, tolkien.org. Other things coming up. Any other questions from the internet audience or the local audience? Are there any topics you want us to quickly cover before we wrap up here?
Last
It
chance.
is time. We need to get Barry back to gaming and wrap up the session. Yes, John.
With extra stuff in between on the Hobbit movies to connect bridge Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit, how will they do that without taking from the Silmarillion and other movies?
Well, like we talked about earlier, Jonathan, they'll be able to take some of the comments that are at the end of The Hobbit and also the parts in the first book of the Lord of the Rings where it discusses that kind of time that happened where Bilbo was there back in, but he didn't look like he was any older, but everybody else is getting older. Right? Frodo grows up, he adopts Frodo. That's all mentioned in the Lord of the Rings, so they can actually film that. And so the first film's due to come out in December of 2012, followed a year later by the second film, 2013.
Okay. Got it?
Great.
All right. Thank you so much for everybody online and everybody here at Tolkien Moot. This is, just for the record, July 17th, 2011, for those who download the podcast later. Oh, yes, Russ.
Just a real quick question.
Yes.
Do you think it'll be in 3D?
The Hobbit?
It is
Peter
already.
Jackson already said he's filming in 3D.
All right.
Yep.
Yeah, for better or worse. But he says that he's taking, he wants to still, he doesn't want to change his style of shooting so that it's like that, everything's being thrown at you and stuff like that. He wants to still film it normally, but give it that added effect. He says he's using the same people and guidance from Cameron.
Avatar.
James Cameron.
So James Cameron. He's using his guidance and crew, because apparently a lot of Jackson's crew and Cameron's crew overlap.
Oh.
They're a lot of the same people, apparently.
I did not know
That was according to the
Yep.
Entertainment Weekly magazine. Who brought me that? Somebody brought me the Entertainment Weekly magazine. Jackson did that.
Andrew
That's
Lesney
cool
is
because I've seen two of the newest 3D movies. The Owl one, where it was just like a frenetic pace where the owls were coming at me. I'm like, oh no, I had grandchildren around, so it was exhausting. And then I saw Tron, where it just smoothed in so perfectly.
That was fun, and it was Tron though too, because
Yeah, exactly.
we expected that because it is a computer world. So. Pros and cons about that movie. And that's something, we do, on Middle Earth Radio, the primary topic is Tolkien, but we also include science fiction, fantasy from other areas as well. today we're leading over, so but that's a nice topic. Real quick, in the chat room, somebody reposted, and I saw this earlier and wanted us to mention it, where Demosthenes saying, yeah, unless they all look like Keeley, talking about the dwarves, oh God, it would be a fangirl paradise, and Tolkien would be rolling over in his grave. You know, if they wanted to make some real comedy, we'd have a female dwarf. You can only imagine. So Ciel reposted that.
They're kind of like the Entwines.
And then also Demosthenes said, a Klingon or the John Travolta character from his movie Battlefield Earth.
Oh.
Wow. Did you see that? Yeah, okay. So we commented on it. We got to laugh at the audience on that one. Yeah, I remember the John Travolta character Battlefield Earth. I actually, I know it bombed. I never read the books, so I don't know how bad it was compared to the books. But I enjoyed the aspect of that. I just saw the movie. I didn't read the books, but I did have fun with that. I thought it was kind of entertaining. Yeah, Travolta was odd, but the whole setup of it I thought was kind of fun. I had fun with it. I didn't have any expectation. I got it at a pawn shop for 50 cents, and what's this? Oh, sci-fi. I'll check it out. I figured it'd be real, just low budget, cheesy. I had no idea. And so it took me by surprise that it was better than that. That being said,
expect good music for these movies.
Oh yeah,
Howard Shore,
of course. Although I do hope he changes it up a little bit. Hopefully, get a new melody style, all that.
Sure.
It is the Hobbit.
Different enough.
And we talked about this before. We've got to wrap up, but music.
Yes.
There's lots of singing in the Hobbit.
Don't throw out all the poetry.
Please don't throw that out. Keep the poems and song. The dwarves sing and play instruments. They break out all their instruments in Bilbo's place. Crack the dishes, break the plates. That's whatever. Yeah, that's fun, and don't lose that lighthearted part. And I know that's tricky to do without making it cheesy in this style of film, but I hope that doesn't get thrown out.
Well, we got a thanks radio dudes.
Yeah, thanks radio dudes from Eldmere. Demosthenes says, release the Thorins. All right. Well, thank you, everybody who's listening out there. This will be uploaded as a podcast later, and we will have the video uploaded. You'll be able to find this audio and video on both the Tolkien Moot and the MiddleEarthRadio.com websites. If you have any questions, you can email webmaster at those domains, or MiddleEarthRadio@gmail.com or TolkienMoot@gmail.com, just in case our spam filters block you or something for normal domains. And Brian, thank you so much for guest hosting this time.
Glad to help out. I hope Michael can come back next year.
I hope so too. I really hope so. I'm really sorry he couldn't get tuned in. He was having technical difficulties, unfortunately.
Yes.
So wherever you may be well. Namaste.
Namaste.